world trade has for many thousands.
Alright, got a new joint for you. 2 slashes already by YouTube. Hating motherfuckers, man. I swear YouTube is whack, man. But we almost did monetization. I got crazy ideas, so let's go. 15 most remarkable lighthouses on Earth. Make sure to go check me out on Instagram. Follow me there, Jonathan_Quest. Links below. SoundCloud.com. JQ Music with a K for free music, and go get my album. Support me. And soon I'm going to give you my Cash App to donate, please.
Of years relied on ships to traverse the oceans. Even with detailed maps,
shit.
this has historically been dangerous because of the risk of sailing into shallow waters. So in regions where this was a particular concern, beacons were built to act as a warning. We don't really rely on them so much now, but many of those structures still remain on the coastlines around the globe as a testament to how important they once were. So from historical monuments to modern-day designs, I'm going to take you on a tour around the 15 most remarkable lighthouses on Earth.
Let's go.
Number 15, Enoshima
Subscribe,
Sea Candle,
comment, request.
Japan. Completed
what
in
you wanna see
2003
on
as
that
part of the
shit. Fire.
celebrations of the centenary anniversary of the Enoshima Electric Railway the previous year, the Enoshima Sea Candle is an incredible modern lighthouse that's become one of the most recognizable features along the Japanese coastline. It's in the Samuel Kaken Garden, which is a botanical garden on Enoshima Island. It's just offshore of Fujisawa City in the Kanagawa Prefecture, and it's next to the site of the island's original lighthouse that was built in 1951, but has now been dismantled after its duties were transferred to the new Sea Candle. At 196 feet or 59.8 meters tall and reaching 392 feet or 119 meters above sea level, this impressive structure features 2 observation decks, one that's inside and one that's outside. And they can both be accessed by spiral staircases. During the day, the Sea Candle offers unparalleled views across the surrounding region and even as far as Mount Fuji, but it's at night that it truly comes into its own when it's illuminated by thousands of lights. Beyond its use as a visitor attraction, the Sea Candle still plays an important role to warn ships off the shore, which it does with a powerful rotating beacon. And as one of the tallest buildings on the island, it's also a major telecom tower. Number 14, Strombolicchio Lighthouse, Stromboli, Italy. Named after the Greek god of the winds, Aeolus, the Aeolian Islands are an archipelago that can be found to the north of Sicily in the
No commercials on JQ TV.
As you'd expect with the position near Italy, it's a region that's historically been a popular trade route, not just for the residents of the islands themselves, but to wider regions across the Mediterranean. And because the islands are volcanic, with a giant active volcano called Stromboli at the center, they're particularly jagged and have a large amount of material just beneath the surface of the water. Countless ships have been known to wreck on the islands as a result, and in 1925 a lighthouse was built on the unnamed sea stack just over a mile from the volcano. Positioned on top of a lighthouse keeper's cottage, the light itself is 26 feet or 8 meters high, but because it's on the stack, it reaches 187 feet or 57 meters above sea level. Both because of the risky climb for anyone to reach it and the ever-present possibility that it could be affected by an eruption from the nearby volcano, this lighthouse was an extremely dangerous facility to operate, but one that was worth the risk because of the number of lives that its operation could save. Luckily, however, today it's fully automated and uses solar power for all of its energy requirements. Number 13, Les Éclaireurs Lighthouse, Argentina. With a name that translates to mean the Scouts, the Les Éclaireurs Lighthouse is on the northeasternmost island of a small island chain in the Beagle Channel of Tierra del Fuego in southern Argentina. It's known locally as the Lighthouse at the End of the World. It stands along a route that was often used by ships traveling around the southern tip of the continent, and a place where wrecks would regularly happen because of the shallow waters and low-lying islands. It first entered service in December of 1920 and was immediately credited with making the route far safer. It has a conical shape measuring 10 feet or 3 meters wide at the base and 36 feet or 11 meters tall, and it's made from bricks. To improve its structural integrity, no windows were put on the main tower, and access to the interior is through a small door at the base that faces west. It's painted red and white for improved visibility, and the lantern housing and gallery at the top means that the light itself is 74 feet or 22.5 meters above sea level. Still, to this day, it's in operation and is run automatically with solar panels to provide power. It emits 2 lights so ships can calculate their distance. and a white light that flashes every 10 seconds that has a range of 12 miles or 19 kilometers, and a red one that has a shorter range of about 8.1 miles or 13 kilometers, and it's become somewhat of a tourist attraction in its own right, with boats from the mainland making daily trips for those who want to see it up close. Number 12. Maiden's Tower, Turkey. The Bosphorus Strait is a natural strait in Istanbul, Turkey, that lies on the continental boundary between Asia and Europe. Its position is part of why Istanbul has throughout history been such a prosperous city, as navigating through it saves a huge amount of time for shipping routes. But it's also extremely narrow, so to aid passage, an outpost has been present on the small islet near its southern entrance ever since the medieval Byzantine period. The first structure, built in 408 BCE, was a military encampment, and over the following centuries it was developed into a watchtower, and then, after a fire in 1721, a lighthouse made of stone. Known as Maiden's Tower, it's been continually restored, repaired, and strengthened since then to become the structure that stands there today, and is one of the most famous monuments in all of Turkey. There's less reliance on the light itself in modern times, so it's become more of a tourist attraction with an observation deck and a restaurant, but it remains a fascinating example of lighthouse architecture. While historical documents show how the tower has changed over time, the origins of its name are far less certain, and have become legendary tales in their own right. The most commonly told story is that it was where a king held his much-loved daughter after hearing from an oracle that she would fall victim to a venomous snake bite on her 18th birthday. When the day came up, he was so pleased she had survived that he gave her a basket of fruit without knowing that an asp was hiding inside. So as she reached in, it delivered the fatal bite, and the prophecy came true. And in her honor, the lighthouse would forever be used to remember her. Number 11. Diamond Head Lighthouse, Hawaii, United States. Set within some of the most beautiful surroundings of any lighthouse, the Diamond Head Lighthouse is in Honolulu on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. At the eastern end of Waikiki Beach, the Diamond Head crater is a famous landmark in the area, but over the years the coastline around it has proven tricky for ships to navigate. It gets its name because in the 1820s, sailors were exploring the area and found what they thought were diamonds in the rocks on the slopes of the volcanoes. While these were later found to be calcite crystals and far less valuable, the name stuck, but by the late 1800s it became renowned for a very different reason. With Honolulu developing as a center of commerce, the number of ships traveling there began to increase, and a lookout was built on Diamond Head to report incoming vessels. It soon became an ideal spot to watch ships running aground in the shallow waters, though, and after a campaign by local business people, the first lighthouse was built from iron and stone by the turn of the century. The light provided ample warning, so further incidents were avoided, but within just 20 years, dangerous cracks had begun forming in the structure, so it was demolished and replaced with the concrete and steel one that stands today. At 57 feet or 17 meters tall, it broadcasts a white light to a distance of 20 miles or about 31 kilometers, and a red light to a distance of 16 miles or 26 kilometers, and has been so integral to the development of the local economy that it was added to the U.S. National Register of Historic Places in 1980. Number 10. La Jument, Brittany, France. Located at the most northwestern point of Brittany in France, La Jument is the name given to a small rock that emerges from the ocean, and also the lighthouse that was built on top of it. This particular part of Brittany has caught out hundreds of ships over the centuries.
Introducing Copa Airlines, one of the most on-time airlines in the world, with seamless connections to unique destinations in Latin America and the Caribbean. So you can disconnect or reconnect. Let's make it happen. Copa Airlines.
With its near invisible rocky outcrops that lie just beneath the water surface, and following the wreck of the SS Drummond Castle in 1896, which resulted in nearly 250 people losing their lives, plans were drawn up to put a lighthouse there to prevent another tragedy. Another 31 ships would wreck there in the following 15 years before the lighthouse was completed, and since then it's been credited with significantly improving maritime safety in the region. But because of its position, those inside the lighthouse have been subjected to some of the most extreme conditions possible. In December of 1989, for example, a particularly powerful storm front moved in from over Ireland and formed waves that measured up to 100 feet or 30 meters tall. They pummeled against the lighthouse, smashing windows, tearing off the entrance door, and flooded the entire interior, making it a miracle that no one lost their lives. Storms like this are common in this area, and because of that, Brittany lighthouses have been automated since 1991, so no one's had to risk their safety in that way again. Number 9. Cape Otway Lighthouse, Australia.
Gorgeous.
Located in Cape Otway, which is along the Great Ocean Road in the state of Victoria, the Cape Otway Lighthouse is the oldest surviving lighthouse in mainland Australia. When development works first began in this area, the government reserved the tip of the cape for a lighthouse, and despite it being difficult to reach and to transport materials to it, the light was first lit in 1848 with a first-order Fresnel lens. Made from sandstone, it's 66 feet or 20 meters tall and is a conical tower with a balcony at the top level. As the closest position on the mainland to the island of Tasmania, it also has a telegraph station, which was added in 1859 that connects to a submarine telegraph line that was laid later that year. And the light itself was soon credited with substantially improving the safety of the shipping routes around the Cape. Despite this, though, it's still been a region that's had a number of incidents, even with the operational lighthouse, with 8 wrecks happening between 1851 and 1932, and you can still see some of their remains today. By 1994, the cost of running the Cape Otway Lighthouse was seen as too great, particularly as it was automated and still required someone to operate it, so it was decommissioned in that year and replaced by a solar-powered light. The main structure is still maintained though, as it's a tourist attraction, and it's now even possible to rent the headlight keeper's original cottage to stay the night, making it one of the more unique accommodation options along the Great Ocean Road. Number 8. Raffles Lighthouse, Singapore. The first suggestion for building a lighthouse on an island called Pulau Satamu in the Singapore Strait was put forward in 1833, but it was only after several ships wrecked on the islands as they approached the country that work finally began in 1854. Pulau Satamu is the southernmost island off the coast of Singapore, and at around 8.7 miles or 14 kilometers from the mainland was the ideal place to put a beacon to warn of the deceptively shallow reefs in the area. Known as the Raffles Lighthouse and named after the founder of modern Singapore, it's been in constant operation ever since it was first switched on in that year. The 95-foot or 29-meter tall tower was constructed from granite and originally had a wick burner light source that was first replaced in 1905 by a pressurized vapor kerosene mantle burner, and was then electrified in 1968 and further upgraded with a rotating beacon that's powered by solar panels in 1988. It's still seen as extremely important to navigation, and as well as having a light that can reach as far as 14 miles or 22 kilometers, it also has a radar beacon that broadcasts navigational information to vessels by Morse code, and an automatic identification system that provides further positioning information to ships. Number 7. Point Bonita, San Francisco, United States. The California gold rush saw countless people traveling to the state in search of their own fortune, but during that time at least 300 boats ran aground near the Golden State, which made it clear that a lighthouse was needed to warn of the hidden dangers. In 1855, the first lighthouse was built at Point Bonita, but because of the dense fog that develops on the west coast, it was soon discovered that it had been built too high and no one at sea could actually see the light. In 1877, it had to be moved, but the only suitable spot was a hard-to-reach location on the coast. To grant access, a 118-foot or 36-meter-long tunnel had to be dug by hand.
Crazy.
But within 60 years, this had crumbled into the sea. To replace it, a wooden walkway was installed, but this too became dangerous and caused a number of injuries, so it was replaced with a metal suspension bridge. Over a few decades, this new bridge began to rust and wear away in the sea breeze, and again became extremely precarious for people to cross. And despite a number of attempts to fix it, had to be closed in 2010. Now, a new bridge has been built to give safe passage to the lighthouse, but after the success of all the previous ones, you have to wonder just how long it will be before it will become a significant safety risk too. Number 6. Bishop Rock, Isles of Scilly. The Isles of Scilly is a small archipelago that can be found around 28 miles or 45 kilometers off the southwest coast of England, and just so happen to be on the edge of what has traditionally been the favored route for crossing the Atlantic from America. It was along this path that ocean liners tried to set the Blue Ribbon transatlantic speed record, but with such potential danger being posed by the islands, it was an obvious place to build a lighthouse. The only problem was that the islands didn't actually provide much space that can be built on, and the light was constructed on one of the most westerly outcrops of the archipelago, which was known as Bishop Rock. In fact, to this day it holds the Guinness World Record for being the world's smallest island with a structure on it. And this posed difficulties not just for those involved in building or maintaining it, but for those who had to live there to keep it lit. The original iron lighthouse that was built in 1847 never once switched on its light because it was washed away by powerful waves before it was completed, and it would be another 11 years until the one that's there today would be completed. Now featuring a helipad for access, people used to have to rappel from the top of the building directly into boats that were waiting below. It's known as the most remote lighthouse in the world. It used to take days to get there by boat, so if the keepers had an accident, it was up to them to sort it out. Number 5. Rubjerg Knull Lighthouse, Denmark. You'd usually expect a lighthouse to be built on a rock face overlooking the ocean, which would possibly make the Rubjerg Knull Lighthouse in Denmark the most surprising one in the world, as it's actually slightly inland and surrounded by sand dunes. This hasn't always been the case, of course, and it's the result of treacherous ocean conditions along the coastline of northern Denmark where it was built. Waves crash into the headland with such ferocity that it recedes by as much as 4.9 feet or 1.5 meters a year, and now looks very different to how it did when buildings were first constructed there. There was, for example, a church next to the site where the lighthouse was built that was finished in 1250, and it was originally 0.6 miles or a kilometer from the coast, but has now been dismantled to prevent the risk of it falling into the sea. As for the lighthouse, it was first lit in December of 1900 and remained in use until 1968. With the increasing risk of it collapsing into the water and a buildup of sand that itself was causing extreme damage, an ambitious plan took place in 2019. At a cost of $750,000, the 75-foot or 23-meter tall structure that weighs more than 750 tons was moved on custom-built rails to its current position, which is 230 feet or 70 meters inland. It's hoped that this will preserve it until at least the 2060s, so it can remain as a historical monument and visitor center.
Crazy, bro.
Number 4. Point Lookout Lighthouse, Maryland. Cities are often built along rivers, which give ships the perfect route to the coastline to join up with trade networks. But the places where rivers meet the ocean are renowned for featuring shallow waters and jagged rocks that can catch out even the most experienced captains. That was exactly the problem that was being faced by vessels trying to navigate the entrance of the Potomac River in Maryland, where it meets the Chesapeake Bay. And in 1825, the federal government began plans to construct a lighthouse to warn of those dangers, and also to mark the entrance to the river. Finally completed in 1830, the structure underwent a number of renovations over the following decades, including the addition of a nearby hospital to treat those injured in the Civil War. It became the site of Camp Hoffman, a prison camp that held as many as 20,000 Confederate prisoners, 3,000 of whom died due to the appalling conditions. And it's this that's believed to have left a never-ending mark on the surrounding area. Now often referred to as the most haunted lighthouse in America, there have been countless tales of strange happenings, such as objects moving and the sounds of screams and groans echoing in the wind. It's become so synonymous with the paranormal. Hunts are conducted there, and if the stories are to be believed, no one who goes on one is ever the same again. Number 3. Tower of Hercules, Spain. Found on a peninsula in northwestern Spain, the 180-foot or 55-meter tall Tower of Hercules looks out across the North Atlantic Ocean and is the oldest known lighthouse anywhere in the world. Inscriptions within the tower show that it was built during the reign of Emperor Trajan and likely dates to the early 1st century, and was probably based on the original designs for the Lighthouse of Alexandria that was once one of the wonders of the ancient world. Amazingly, unlike any others that were built at the time, the Tower of Hercules has remained in use since it was completed. This has been possible because of the relatively gentle climate in the region, and thanks to a large restoration effort that took place in the 18th century. It still looks just how it originally was, and even retained a central core of its original Roman masonry, and stands as an example of how advanced the empire truly was. It also shows just how important it was for them to keep control of the region, because it would have been a huge undertaking to build a lighthouse like this. They had named the peninsula Finisterre because they saw this part of Spain as the end of the earth, and the coastline was so famous for shipwrecks that it was called the Costa de Morte, or Coast of Death, a reputation that it keeps to this day. It has for such a long time been a recognizable monument on the shoreline, and writings from throughout history mention the Tower of Hercules. In the Middle Ages, it would be an obligatory stop-off point for ships traveling to the Holy Land during the Crusades, and features prominently on maps from the time, as much as a welcome sight on that voyage. Number 2. Petit Menou, Brest, France. The French coastline is renowned for its jagged rocks and unpredictable weather patterns that, over many centuries, and with the fact that it's a vital route for cross-European trade and travel, have been the downfall of thousands of ships. To the west of France, there's a peninsula that juts out into the ocean that's called Brittany, and even captains familiar with these waters could easily find themselves in trouble without assistance. This became even more of an issue in the 17th century when the huge Fort du Petit Menou was built to defend the strait of water that connects the city of Brest with the Atlantic Ocean, and with more than 240 cannons, ensured that this wasn't a place an enemy ship would want to accidentally venture into. French ships experienced their own problems though, so in the mid-19th century the decision was made to build a lighthouse in front of the port to help them navigate the strait. Used to show the safe route and warn of a series of submerged rocks, it became vital for shipping in the area, but also a target for those wanting to disrupt it. Legends talk of lighthouse keepers being kidnapped or killed to prevent the light from operating properly, in an attempt to cause losses to the French fleet without having to fire a single weapon. Luckily now, it too is automated, and while modern ships have far better navigational aids, it's still one of the places where captains rely on the precise warnings to stay safe. Number 1. Eldred Rock Lighthouse, Alaska, United States.
I heard Alaska.
Between 1902 and 1906, 10 lighthouses were built around Alaska to assist with navigation. And now, only one of them remains, the Eldred Rock Lighthouse, which is near the entrance to the Lynn Canal in the southeast of the state. With an octagonal design that was chosen to help it endure the environment, it was completed in 1906 and is 56 feet tall or 17 meters. It originally had a custom-built Fresnel lens that, with the use of sheets of glass and a prism, would alternate between emitting a red and white light, and required a keeper to be present to operate it all the way up until 1973 when it was automated. Built from bricks and wood, it remains virtually identical now to how it was when it was completed more than a century ago, and is a fascinating look into the history of shipping and the associated support structures from the time. It's for this reason that the Eldred Rock Lighthouse was added to the U.S. National Register of Historic Places in 1975, and with the protections this affords, it will be preserved for generations to come. I'll see you next time.
Let's go.
Watch our binge watching.
Catch y'all on the flip side, you heard? Let's go. Deuces.